So I just wanted to add a clarification into the Brexit segment that Georgia and I did talking about trade. So we based it off of this article here of Barnier talking about potentially a more flexible framework, and so they might bend a bit on things like what was it called, a level playing field. And so what we saw in this article from Barnier saying that we might have a bit of flexibility to give some leeway to give. Obviously, we're not going to jeopardize the integrity of the single market, but um, we can give you something, if that makes sense. And so this is the article that we kind of based it on, sort of talking about because this was very surprising, and this article only came out on the 24th of June. Georgia and I recorded the podcast on the 26th of June, but as things move really quickly, we can see in this article here that Angela Merkel said the UK must live with the consequences of weaker ties to the EU. So the UK will have to live with the consequences of Boris ditching Theresa May's plan to maintain close economic ties with the EU after Brexit. Angela Merkel has said, hardening her tone over the prospect of a no-deal scenario next year. After more than 3 years in which the German Chancellor repeatedly emphasised her openness to a deal that would maintain the UK's current flow of trade with the bloc, she suggested that the door leading to such a compromise has now closed. And she talks about how something to do with regulations, things like let's see if we can find it. So he says, if Britain does not want to have rules on the environment and the labour market or social standards that compare with those of the EU, our regulations will be less close. That would mean it does not want standards to go on developing along parallel lines. And so this was a key problem with a level playing field with regards to things like regulations, and less so social standards, more so economic and labour regulations, because what the EU doesn't want is a Singapore on the Thames, a really low regulation, low standard country which is right by the EU, competing with the EU for things like financial services, and dominating similar to, I think, how Singapore have dominated Asia. And so that's the problem. So just a quick clarification: I did show this article to Georgia because this article only came out on the 26th, so this also came out yesterday. And so that's the nature of just recording stuff, I guess. And so I thought it was important to add this clarification. I did speak to Georgia about it, and she said it's probably a good idea to add this, purely because it would be kind of disinformation for us to have given this article here, especially because I had the knowledge of this article prior to the podcast going out. So just letting you guys know that clearly there is not as smooth as I thought it may have been. Like, there is very little leeway to be given, but then again, this is just posturing on their part. So this could be Barnier and the EU saying, we're open to giving you a deal and making concessions, but you also have to make concessions. And then once the UK doesn't make those concessions, the EU could say, we're not the bad guys here. But at the same time, this Angela Merkel saying, we're not going to make concessions. You either have close economic ties to us, like Theresa May wanted, or you go it alone, big man. And so, that's the kind of thing, the clarification I want to add. So this has gone on long enough. And so, hopefully if you've made it this far, keep enjoying the video. So, I'll tee this up with, we've seen some recent good news. I'll just find the article here. So, Brussels is signalling a compromise on the level playing field. And so what's happening is that Brussels are saying, we might give you some leeway when it comes to level playing field, but the UK has also said that, if regulations in this country do change, then Brussels is okay to put tariffs on any UK products, which does cause more friction. But at the same time, at least we're getting somewhere, it feels like. But at the same time, like, they're saying there's not a long time for us to come up with a deal, and there's also problems with border checks where the UK has dropped plans for a full border check on goods coming from the EU, which causes another potential problem with the favourable trade thing from the WTO. So as far as I know, if you have one rule for one WTO member, the EU in this case, then you can't have trade barriers for other countries. So if you're not going to check EU goods, you can't check goods coming in from other countries, right?
Yes.
But at the same time,
as long as you don't have a trade.
Yeah, a trade deal, right?
Yeah.
And so I did.
Otherwise,
oh, go on.
No. Otherwise, you have to follow the WTO regulations. With tariffs, with quotas, depending on what type of goods you're producing and want to export, or what type of goods you want to import as well.
And also, I did. What was I going to say? I did watch a video from, I think it's a WTO seminar thing, where the lady, one of the people from the WTO, she says that as long as it's not like similar goods or like goods. So I don't know if it's going to be very hard to define if chlorinated chicken is the same as just non-chlorinated chicken. I guess the UK would say no, but then the US would say yes, and that causes more problems, right? That's kind of
Yes.
how you define things. And obviously, if we're not careful, we will get sued by other WTO members, and it will make it potentially more difficult for us to get trade deals if we keep messing around like this. And there was another point to be made about the UK not being able to get enough of a border force in. So the UK races to find an extra 50,000 staff for post Brexit paperwork, and I don't think that's been done yet. And obviously, getting the proper facilities in place to do things like checking goods is still not there. With Michael Gove saying it might take about till 2025 or 24 to actually get the computer systems up and running, which I think is a lie because we've had massive computer issues within this country. They had it with universal credit, they had it with the court system, and so I would be surprised if it's closer to 2028. They get the computer systems up and running, and there was a few more things that I was going to talk about. I forgot what they were, but it's not looking too positive, is it, with Brexit? Or what do you think? Do you think it's looking better, or
Sorry, can you say it again?
so? Do you think the UK is looking okay with Brexit? Better with Brexit now? At least we've got some movement with regards to things like a level playing field, which obviously isn't good for the people within the UK, but it means that at least we're getting some headway. So what do you think? Because obviously before the EU was saying, if there's no level playing field, you're not going to get a deal.
I
Sorry,
don't really.
that's pretty long. Sorry. Um,
No, no, no. I know, I know. To be honest, it's just it's really confusing because it's not yet in place, But
mm.
they want to get their deal by the end of July, was it?
Something like that. They want to get a massive amount of progress done by the end of July, and July is very close, very very close. The end of July, even for trade negotiation. Um, and so, what do you think? Do you think how do you think things are looking?
I, to be honest, it's gonna be really quick, as I have read a bit. Like, the EU wants to make a bit longer negotiations to find out, like, all the aspects of the economy,
The specifics, yeah.
agriculture, import, traveling, immigration, and blah blah blah. UK is like, no, we need it now. I think something in between is good, like saying
Because
that you want a deal by the end of July,
yeah,
it's very short term.
the problem is if you want the deal done quicker, you have to give more concessions, and that's something we saw with Boris when he gave the original his version of the withdrawal agreement. There were a lot of concessions in there where he gave up a lot of the UK stake in the European central bank, I think it was, where there's like billions of pounds belonging to the British taxpayer in there. We're not getting that back. And so what they did was they forced him to give up things which he should never have given up. And obviously the backstop turned into a front stop with regards to Northern Ireland, and so that's going to potentially cause more problems with border checks within the Irish Sea. So not only do we have to strengthen one side of the border for border checks, we have to do the other side of the UK as well. And there's also problems with the water there as well. I think like it's very hard to build like a land crossing between the Republic of no, Northern Ireland and the UK as well, like the UK mainland. And so I think my opinion is at least we're getting somewhere with regards to level playing field and things like state aid. So it's looking better in some ways, but at the same time, like I don't know what Johnson's end game is, and that's why I'm not 100% sure. What the hell's going on? Like setting up things like border checks. If we don't check these things, then we might get sued by WTO members, and that's a separate headache. Also, I don't think the UK sorted out its scheduling at the WTO, which any WTO member can veto. So we've gone from being vetoed by potentially 27 countries to I think it's well over like 100 countries in the WTO or something like that. So that causes more problems, and these guys are sharks. Like if you thought EU countries were vicious, these guys are way worse. There are some real sharks in the WTO, and so I'm not sure where we go from here because there's not a lot of planning going on in the UK. What do you think?
Same here, but it's a bit unclear what will happen due to coronavirus as well. We never know how
Yeah,
it will turn. So I don't know, like this decision to do it all quickly, I don't know what effect it will have in long term.
and
Because
obviously,
you never know the effect of this other one that came surprisingly.
or what the pandemic or
Yeah.
So do you think things are looking better, or do you think things are looking a bit worse? Because at least we've got some movement with regard to a deal,
No,
which
it
is
looks good. At least, some movement is there. So we know
yeah.
that they are doing something, which is definitely good.
Okay, so that I think that will deal with that question. At least we're getting somewhere, but it's not looking massively positive because they want to do this deal really quickly. So